This is TWIS, This Week in Science, episode number 526, recorded on Wednesday, August 5th, 2015. Cockadoodle Moon! I'm Blair, and today we'll fill your head with zombie spiders, homo harems, and cocksure roosters. But first...
Disclaimer, disclaimer, disclaimer. You are not going to believe this. Something so amazing has taken place that only those who have been listening to the show for a very long time will understand how this monumental, game-changing breakthrough in our understanding of the fundamental functioning of the universe, this consequential conquest of concepts that can be captivated with the civilized contours of our culture. And now, just now, here we have learned how to harness it, to unveil our history with hue and clarity, to high hurdle over and give a heave-ho to health issues, and to plot our path across the cosmos in search of safe harbors in the heavens. Yes, everything we have talked about on this show in the past will prepare you for what you're about to hear next. After all this and more is what you've come to expect to hear on each and every episode you tune into of This Week in Science. Coming up next.
I've got the kind of mind that can't get enough. I want to learn everything. I want to fill it all up with new discoveries that happen every day of the week. There's only one place to go to find the knowledge I seek. I want to know what's happening. What's happening? What's happening this week in science? What's happening? What's happening? What's happening this week in science?
Good science to you, Blair.
Good science to you, Justin. Welcome, everyone, to this week's episode of This Week in Science. We have an awesome show ahead, despite the lack of Kiki. I know we're very sad about that, but science shall prevail. On this week's show, we have so much science news. I have those cocksure roosters I mentioned before. I have a plant species discovered on Facebook. I have a little something about pandas. And I have snow leopard blood. What do you have, Justin?
I've got homo harems, horse heads, kissing cultures, and fighting cancer with moles.
With moles, you say?
With moles.
Oh, all right. Let's get into it. Justin, give me some science.
All right. A new analysis of early hominin body size evolution led by George Washington University professors suggests that the earliest members of the Homo genus, which also includes the Homo sapiens, of which we are mostly made up of, may not have been larger than the earlier hominin species, as almost all of the hows and whys of human evolution are tied to the estimates of body size at particular points in time. These results change numerous adaptive hypotheses based around the idea that the origins of Homo coincided with or were driven by an increase in our body mass.
Because bigger's better.
Bigger is better. Makes us more efficient killing, hunting, foraging machines. in body mass estimates of hominin fossils and the evolution of body size, the title of the paper published online in the Journal of Human Evolution. Mark Grabowski, assistant research professor in the GW Center for Advanced Study on Human Paleobiology, and his co-authors provide the most comprehensive set of body mass estimates, species averages, and species averages by sex for fossil hominins to date. Produced using cutting-edge methodology and the largest sample of individual early hominin fossils available, analysis of the results show that early hominins were generally smaller than previously thought, and that the increase in body size occurred not between Australopiths and the origins of Homo, but later with Homo erectus, the first species that was widely sort of traveled outside of Africa. Quoty voice, one of our major results is that we found no evidence that the earliest members of our genus differed in body mass from our earlier Australopiths, said Dr. Grabowski, who is, he's also in other words, the factors that set our lineage apart from our earlier ancestors were unrelated to an increase in body size, which had been the linchpin of numerous adaptive hypotheses on the origin of our genus. This is then quoty voice of Bernard Wood. There are several untested assumptions about the origin of Homo. The study debunks one of those The one that suggests that until the origin of our own genus, for one reason or another, and the usual explanation is not enough meat in the diet, all early hominins were small-bodied. This elegant study shows that body size did not make a sharp uptick with the arrival of early Homo. My prediction is that this is just the first of many preconceptions about early Homo that will be debunked in the next few years. Also interesting, until now, anthropologists have generally relied on estimates of hominin body mass presented in a paper back in 1992. Since then, many more fossils have been discovered. Researchers better understand the complexities of human evolution. Dr. Grabowski and his co-authors build on and update McHenry's. This is Henry M. McHenry. I think he's here at UC Davis. Build on the updated McHenry's results and apply new and novel methods to analyze a comprehensive fossil data set. Researchers hope their results will be the new standard for fossil hominin body estimates. In addition, this was the interesting part I was alluding to earlier, Dr. Grabowski and the co-authors found that the level of size difference between males and females, aka sexual dimorphism, appears to only have slightly decreased from earlier hominin species by the time of the early Homo erectus. So this is talking about the difference between the men's and the women's. There was a large difference.
There was a larger difference, but it wasn't as big of a difference as we thought it was going to be.
And no, yeah, there was a large difference. They had assumed, I guess, or thought from what they had their previous studies that we had gotten much closer in size, right? But it turns out we aren't actually much closer in size in the earlier Homo erectus time. It only decreased to modern human-like low levels much later in our lineage. So high levels of dimorphism is something you might see in a gorilla family, where the male gorillas are very large in comparison with the females. Correlates more with a harem-like social structure. It says here, this result should give pause to evolutionary models that see a more modern human-like monogamous social structure evolving early in our lineage. It was likely not Adam and Eve, but Adam and Eve and Jill and Janet and so on.
Yeah, it seems like there's been a lot of evidence to point towards that. I mean, there's certainly, just looking at the percentage of harem-like societies in mammals to monogamous sort of relationships in mammals, there's way more precedent for the harem relationship in the natural world.
And it exists even today. I mean, we speak of this as though the Western world culture was the only one that existed. Many places in the world, the one male, multi-female home is normal.
And I have to say, that's what makes us really unusual, is that we as humans have so many different methodologies.
Yeah.
And that actually it's a lot more common, if you look at the natural wild world, for a species to generally follow a certain archetype when it comes to relationships. But we have figured out a way to have representatives from every element of the spectrum in society. It's pretty interesting.
Yeah, it is. And this also just in, you have a face like a horse.
How dare you?
Not you, just people in general. Mammal communication researchers have shown that, like humans, horses use muscles underlying various facial features, including nostrils, lips, and eyes, to alter their facial expressions in a variety of social situations. Findings published in PLOS, Public Library of Science Online, PLOS One today, suggest evolutionary parallels in different species and how the face is used for communication. The study builds on previous research showing that cues from the face are important for horses to communicate. By developing an objective coding system to identify different individual facial expressions on the basis of underlying muscle movement, they came up with the equine facial action coding system, which they've called Equifax. As divided by the Sussex team in collaboration with researchers at the University of Portsmouth and Dosqueen, can't pronounce it, University, identified 17 action units, discrete facial movements in horses. This compares to 27 that are in humans, so we're a little bit more facially emotive. And it's 4 more, 13 in chimps, and 1 more, only 16 in dogs. The study's co-lead author, doctoral researcher Jennifer Wathen, says horses are predominantly visual animals with eyesight that's better than domestic cats and dogs, yet their use of facial expression has been largely overlooked. What surprised us was the rich repertoire of complex facial movements in horses and how many of them are similar to humans. Despite the differences in face structure between horses and humans, we were able to identify some similar expressions in relation to movements of the lips and eyes. What we'll now be looking at is how these expressions relate to their actual emotional states. What they did is they analyzed video footage of a wide range of naturally occurring horse behaviors to identify all the different movements it is possible for horses to make with their faces. They also carried out an anatomical investigation to the facial muscles that underpin these movements. Each individual facial movement that was identified was given a code. And then as they witnessed it, it was then qualified to what the expression was in correlation to the horse behavior. So it may, it's very similar ability to contort the face. Now the next one is to see if there is some sort of universality of emotional state that we could better communicate, really, even if it is just one way, in observing horse facial language.
I found this study very interesting because I think I reported it on the show, but I know I read it about 6 months ago, right around the beginning of the year. Some scientists published a study about donkey emotions and specifically their ears. And then looking at a donkey's ears, you could guess their emotional state. So this is kind of along the same line, donkeys, horses. Ears are involved in this study that you were just reading. And so it just shows us that people think that, first of all, animals don't have emotions similar to humans, which perhaps they're not as complex. I'll definitely give you that. But they definitely have, based on hormones alone, we know that they can feel a bonding sensation that we call love. They can feel content. They can feel scared. They can feel a lot of the same emotions. And then within that they would have signaling for that makes perfect sense, because they'd want to emote to each other. If they were scared, they might want to indicate to another horse that there's a reason to be scared nearby. And there's a lot of reasons to emote those things. The other thing is people don't always see them unless they look really close. And people who take care of animals, that's one of their main jobs, is to recognize a change in facial expression on an animal, even though it might be harder for an untrained eye to notice if your dog is in pain, for example.
And so that brings up something interesting too, because I actually didn't see any mention of ears in this study. And if I correlate that to even the dog, right? The dog had one less emotive ability or codex than the horse. Now, what about ears? And then what about a wagging tail versus an erect tail? I mean, maybe if we had ears, think of how many more emoticons we would have.
Have ears.
Sad ears, happy ears, attentive ears. Like we'd have all this.
Also, human ears do move. They don't wag. They don't get perked up. But a lot of people, their ear and their scalp will move.
I've seen that connection before, but I don't know that I've seen it as a tick. I knew somebody who had a tick where they would do this forehead waggle and their ears would move together. But I don't know that they were emoting anything. Hey, humans have big brains. Comparatively to other living creatures on the planet we inhabit, it is safe to say that we have exceptional brainy nature about us.
Indeed.
Yes, but for all of our big-brained brawn, it takes a surprisingly small cluster of brain cells deep within the cerebellum to learn a new physical task. This is from researchers at McGill University, led by Kathleen Cullen from the Department of Physiology. They have discovered that to learn new motor skills, neurons with the cerebellum engage in elegant, virtually mathematical computations to quickly compare expected and actual sensory feedback. Then they quickly readjust, changing the strength of connections between other neurons to form new patterns in the brain in order to accomplish the task at hand. We have known, this is quotey voice from Cullen, we've known for some time that the cerebellum is part of the brain that takes in the sensory information and causes us to move or react in appropriate ways. Says Cullen, what we didn't know until now is that the single neurons in our brain manage to dynamically track the difference between what the brain expects to take in from the senses and the information it actually receives or is actually receiving during motor learning. Our research shows that this calculated difference, they're calling sensory prediction error, sensory prediction error signal, is used to rapidly change the patterns and connections between neurons in order to learn new motor skills. And this is individual neurons that are reconnecting, interconnecting, and they're doing this super fast. It says to learn a new motor skill, the brain makes an estimate of the expected sensory inflow that it should get from your sensory system. And this is why practice is important, people. Without practicing something, you don't really have a decent estimate of the expected sensory inflow that you're going to get. That's what practice is. Get your brain used to what to expect from that sensory inflow. Then the cerebellum uses this prediction to compute the difference between that practice that you intended to do and what actually is going on right now. It says elite athletes are not only better at coordinating their movements, their brains are also better at making these kinds of rapid predictions and readjustments. An example they use here is a gymnast doing a backflip on a balance beam depends on this ability to precisely compute the mismatch, not just to predict where they're going to land backwards over there. I don't know how you flip on a balance beam. It's just insane to me. But it's not just that their brain is ready ready with that expectation, knowing where they're going to land. It's also taking in the actual sensory information, finding the slight differences between what they expected, or in my case, very drastic differences it would have been between what we expected to have happen and what's actually going on. So they say this this finding that I think they used monkey brains on this, but macaque monkeys, yeah. Macaques, thank you. Macaque. But what's sort of interesting too is that this not only gives us insight into the ability for athletes to do these judgments and how our own brain works, but it might equally be relevant to stroke and multiple sclerosis patients and clinicians who treat them, and sort of zeroing in on areas that will allow them to better match their predicted with the actual inflow of information coming in.
I think about, besides athletes, I think about playing music. And that's one of the very classic practice things that you talk about, right? And if you're very good at your instrument, you can sight read, which means you see a note on a staff, you turn that into the letter of the note that it means. Then in your brain, that letter turns into a finger kind of placement on your instrument. And all of that happens in a fraction of a second.
And then when you hit the wrong note, you must adjust immediately. Whoa, that's not what I sent out. That's not what I predicted to hear.
Improvisation, that every note you play affects the next note you play, trying to tell a story. That is a very well practiced nerve pathway in your brain. Yeah, and
it's kind of curious too. I mean, this is in the motor reactions to that, but I can see how it would also play in if you were doing a improvised jam session with somebody else, where you've got to rapidly make those adjustments that weren't necessarily predicted, but it's the direction they're heading, and now you've got to keep with it. But this is done. It's done. All of this is going on. All this that we've talked about in terms of the motor cortex and the physical reaction, the prediction, the information flow is happening in a very tiny cluster of neurons. This is not your whole brain working hard to make this happen. This is some tiny subset of your brain that's fully dedicated to this task and able to accomplish it. So don't need the big brain for it. This is what we see, when animals learn to hunt or swim or do whatever they're doing, running around out there.
That wrinkly gray mass has so many secrets. Tell us your secrets. Hey, if you just tuned in, you're listening to This Week in Science with usually Dr. Kiki, Justin Jackson, and me, Blair Bazdarich. We're sans Dr. Kiki tonight, so we're going to jump right into...
Is it that time again? Are we there? Is it?
She loves our creatures, great and small. Biped, millipede, no pet at all. You want to hear about animals? She's your girl. Except for giant pandas and squirrels. There's animal for her.
What you got, Blair?
Oh my goodness. I'm going to start right off with roosters. What sound does a rooster make, Justin?
Cock-a-doodle-doo!
At least in America, that's what we say a rooster makes.
Oh, what is it? There's an international. They have different dialects. I didn't know.
Every country, I encourage everyone to check this out. For example, when I was living in Israel, a rooster in Israel says "kukuriku."
Cucarico.
That's true. Anyway,
Got like a Latin flavor. How did that happen?
I don't know. So roosters, they're famous for crowing at dawn. Well, there's a lot of organization going on when it comes to crowing that we did not previously know about. They crow in order of seniority. The quote, top cock announces daybreak, while everyone else below him takes turns crowing after he goes. And they know this based on who the biggest and baddest rooster is. So roosters, or cocks, short for cockerels, bet you didn't know that. The cockerels let the biggest, baddest rooster go first, no matter what time he decides to go, which is the most interesting part of this Japanese study, in my opinion. They had roosters square off. No roosters were harmed. They had them square off, saw who won the kind of sparring matches, and then they were able to rank all these roosters from top to bottom based on that, like a bracket system. Then they had them in different groups and waited for them to crow in the morning. And they found that if the top rooster was there, he always went first. No one crowed before him. If he was not there, the second in line rooster was allowed to go first, and so on. It was very strictly observed. What makes it even more interesting is we know that their crowing is influenced by their circadian rhythms. And we've heard about other stories, I think I've even reported some on the show, where they altered a rooster's circadian rhythms by changing UV light and all this kind of stuff. And they saw how long it would take for the circadian rhythm to break down. What they found was that even when they disrupted the circadian clock, all of the other roosters would still wait patiently for the highest ranking rooster to crow, even if it was early or late. They let him go. And so they will bypass their own circadian clock to kowtow to the top cock.
Wow.
Yeah. So this is very multi-layered. So first of all, roosters know who's in charge. They let the guy in charge go first. Second of all, circadian rhythm, very strong, telling them when it's time to crow. And third of all, they will ignore their own rhythm to pay attention to the social strata.
So roosters are kind of like yes men. In a way, they're like, I know it's time, but it'll just cause problems if I speak out.
Yeah. Well, because the crowing is a territorial call. He's saying, this is my space. First of all, ladies, here's my territory. Second of all, indicating that they're very big and strong, so they should not be attacked by predators. So the first rooster to crow is the one that you don't mess with. That also means that if they crow first, they are identifying themselves as the first to food, hen, and roosting places. I'm in charge. Let me go first for everything.
So now I'm really super curious, like, how do they enforce it?
Well, they spar. And, you know, cockfights are a thing for a reason. They can get pretty nasty, roosters. I mean, they don't get equipped with the same metal objects that they do in cockfights, but they still have their sparring claw that's on the inside that usually if you see domestic chickens, that sometimes they'll cut those off when they're babies because people think it's ugly. I don't know. But those are usually what they use when they fight, are the little nail on the inside of their arm that's right here. Or their arm, their leg. Anyway. So roosters, not a slave to the circadian rhythm.
Oh, yeah.
Speaking of circadian rhythms.
Oh, wait, real quick. Panda Squirrel in the chat room has a great comment. What
Yeah.
happens if the top cock drops dead overnight?
Then the second in line goes.
Did they really? Do they know right away? Or are they like, but they have to wait like a day or two, right? They're like,
So it depends. If it's clear that he's not around,
what happened?
then they go ahead. So
On
in the case
vacation?
of the study, they removed the top cock from the
Ooh.
room. They didn't see him around. Second in line went for it.
Oh, wow. Okay. Hmm.
So if they know he's not around, they're like, okay, I'm in charge now.
I guess it's up to me. Carry
Yeah.
on.
So speaking of rhythms, pandas. Pandas are special, you guys. We've talked about how many a time. Well, now they won't follow the rules of nature in yet another way. So I'm being silly. It's actually very interesting. Pandas are really special in this one way. So normally, mammals fall into 3 different categories of rhythms or behaviors during their 24-hour cycle. They're nocturnal. That means they're awake at night and they sleep during the day. They're diurnal. That means they're awake during the day and they sleep at night. That's most humans, right? And a lot of animals, it turns out, are crepuscular. You heard of this word before, Justin?
It's the first time I've heard crepuscular.
So crepuscular means they are active twice a day at dawn and at dusk. And a lot of animals are awake at dawn and dusk for different reasons. If they're a predator, it might be so they can get the nocturnal and the diurnal animals. It can
Makes
check for
sense.
both. When they're both off guard, one's going to sleep, one's waking up, perfect time to hunt. Can also be the most habitable temperature of the day. If it gets very cold at night and very hot during the day, that's the best time.
The Goldilocks zone of going around and doing stuff.
Yeah, and if you're an animal that uses sight to find food or shelter or mates or whatever, and you don't want to be out during the day, that's when you're going to get a little bit of light to still be able to see. So there's a lot of different reasons to want to be a crepuscular animal, and pandas were thought to be that. We were never sure. This is the part that's very interesting. We were never sure because China does not want us putting GPS collars on pandas. They are extremely protective of these pandas, and there has been a ban for over a decade from putting GPS collars on pandas. So some people tried to track them just by sight. This study was the very first where they have been able to do GPS tracking technology on these pandas to figure out exactly what their movements and their activity pattern was. What they found is that they're actually awake 3 times during the day. They are awake.
What?
Yeah. They have 3 major peaks. They're awake in the morning, in the afternoon, and at midnight. So you can't call them any of the 3. They're not nocturnal. They're not diurnal. They're not crepuscular. They're a weird extra thing that we haven't.
They're pandas.
They're pandas.
Yeah.
And as far as we can tell, there's one main reason for this, and it's because, remember, just a few months ago, we reported on how pandas, they do not have the right gut bacteria to process bamboo. So they only digest 20% of what they eat.
So they gotta wake up and eat again.
Gotta wake up and eat again. And here's the thing, the other thing, they don't have to worry about predators. They have no predators. So they can wake up and go eat whenever they want. I'm hungry, I'm gonna go eat. No consequences.
Midnight raiding the fridge, nobody's gonna be stopping me.
Exactly. So they need to eat often, and they have no reason to avoid going out in the open because they have no predators. So
yeah, Twit Refugee in the chat room has a great point. He says this would actually kind of make them not lazy, right, Blair?
interesting point. And
Uh-huh.
I know it's interesting. I almost think of them like shift workers, where we're used to them being lazy and lying around, but it's because they never get to sleep a full 8 hours.
Yeah.
So they're just always, not only can they not digest their food, but they're so tired because they can't get a full night's sleep. So it's very interesting that we're just now starting to GPS track them. And this is the big asterisk on this story. This was GPS tracking of 5 pandas. Only
Right.
5.
So it could be, it's possible this is like a pod mentality then, or a one panda culture. And if we went out and found other pandas, we might find something completely different.
Possible.
But how many panda cultures are there out there?
Right. And this was over 2 years. It's possible there was some weird temperature.
Over 2 years is pretty solid, though. You would think there'd be enough.
But what they did see was that there was a seasonal change too, that in the spring they had a huge uptick in activity as well. And they think it's because there's a specific type of bamboo called umbrella bamboo that has better nutrients in it. So it's possible that they wanted to capitalize on this extra tasty bamboo and also that it gave them more energy. That's also the time when they're supposed to be moving around to find a mate. So if they're not super lazy about that, they're going to be more active in the spring as well.
And we also discovered at some point on an even earlier episode of TWIS that pregnant pandas seek out a certain type of bamboo.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So they're not lazy. They're just moving at a different pace than the rest of us, which we assumed was slower. But now we see that they're active 3 times a day.
Well,
it's like, can you?
Not slow. It just means.
Well, no, but also the metabolism. What was it? Was comparable to sort of like a sloth in the metabolistic system or something. I can't remember what it was.
All in all, the panda story
looks similar. I can see the black, the white, the pattern, just enough to throw you off.
Is still unfolding. I am withholding my judgment.
Oh.
Ultimately, this just means that they really need a lot of bamboo habitat. If they're eating, if they're getting up and they're eating 3 times a day, they need space, they need lots of bamboo, they need the ability to get up and move around without being disturbed 3 times a day. So this is, again, we have to ask ourselves, if we want to save the panda, these are things we need to know. So this is great information to add to kind of the panda file for conservation efforts.
So are we going to have to at some point change the intro song to Blair's Animal Corner? Because
To be objective here,
pandas are starting to see, they seem to be winning you over bit by bit, story by story, revelation by revelation.
the conservation funds, I think there's other species that would be better off helped. However, this is just interesting science. I'm just reporting the science. The last story before the break, I wanted to talk about zombie spiders.
How do you do that with that? That's actually pretty creepy. Seeing a zombie did the zombie hand out march, but with 8
legs. Yeah.
legs.
So there is a species of wasp called Reclinervelis nielseni that parasitizes an orb-weaving spider called Cyclosa argentioalba. So this wasp lays eggs inside or on this orb-weaving spider, and they turn the spider into a zombie. So they have the spider just kind of go about carrying these eggs around, and eventually this spider spins a special web for these larvae before they hatch.
Huh?
It makes a special web
for the larva.
Yeah, it makes a cocoon actually. And then the larva kills the spider, kicks it out of the web, and lives in the cocoon until it is ready to come out.
Wow. Now you talk about hacking. You talk about hacking. This is a parasitic beyond. This is an actual hack job. This is repurposing a living organism to do your bidding without you being present to tell it or manipulate it to do so the whole time. Wow, that's intense.
Yeah, and we've talked about other species that turn other species into zombies. The other wasp turned ants into a zombie that just kind of carried the stuff around.
Yeah.
This takes it a whole nother step, because these zombie spiders, they have already built one kind of web. These spiders have two different kinds of webs. They have webs that they use for catching prey, and they have, quote, resting webs that they use when they're molting. Because when a spider is molting, they're soft, they can't eat, and they're very susceptible to predation. So this resting web is specially made to protect the spider while it's molting. So the wasp lays the eggs on the spider. The spider then it kind of demolishes the feeding web. It starts to build a resting web, and then it alters the building design to make this cocoon in the center.
This is body snatching to a degree, right? I mean, it's one thing if it just made its own resting thing. Like, okay, so then the larva made it think it was molting, so it made the resting web, and then the larva took over and kicked it out. Okay, one wasp got lucky with this a long time ago, and ever since it's been a pattern. But for it to be altering the type of web it made to more customize it for the larva, that is a level of interspecies manipulation that is intense, and
it's out of control. So they take this resting web, which normally you would not really expect it to be like it is. So if I was a molting spider and I didn't want animals to come near me, you would think I'd want to hide. But actually they make this resting web very conspicuous. It has lots of visible, fluffy elements to it. And they actually do that so that animals don't accidentally fly into the web. And so animals know to avoid the web because there's a spider inside of it. So they design this web to be cushiony and soft and a good place for them to hang out, and additionally to advertise the fact that do not disturb. It's basically a giant do not disturb sign, right? Now that is good for about a couple days, because that's how long it takes for the spider to molt. But that's not good enough for this wasp species, because they need the larvae need to stay in there for at least 10 days once they've been wrapped up in the cocoon. And so looking at how these things are made, scientists figured out that it wasn't special silk, it wasn't a special design of web. They have just figured out how to brainwash these spiders into using a lot of their silk. They use so much of it that it's extra fortified. The cocoon is real thick and strong, and they found that it was at least 2.7 times greater than the breaking forces of the silks that make up their normal web. So it's 2.7 times stronger. That's pretty intense. And what's more interesting is that they found that if they took these spiders that were under control of these parasitizing larvae, they were already zombie spiders, but they pulled the larva out, they removed the larva, the spiders still went off and started to make their resting web. So there's some sort of, they believe it's hormones. There's some sort of hormones that they release through the eggs or the larva that affect the spider's actions after that. That's what makes them a zombie. It's not the animals growing inside of them. It's something being released by them, some hormone or something like that.
So they go on to make the resting, but do they make the reinforced resting, like the? Yes. It is the reinforced. Oh, wow, okay.
Yeah. And so the hormone is actually very similar to the hormone that the spider has released right before it molts, which motivates it to start building the resting nest.
And then maybe a little whisper, big storm coming. You might want to make it a little stronger than last time. lot of wind in the forecast.
Yeah, so that's the next step, is to figure out exactly what makes
What it's
go
telling
the
you, yeah.
extra step to make the cocoon web. But pretty interesting stuff.
And I guess if we're talking hormonal, I guess it could just be more of the signal. Like if you get the signal once,
They
maybe
are-
isn't.
Whole cocoon little situation that's still very different from their normal web. So it's the idea is a resting web. It's very similar to a resting web, but it's different enough that they're not convinced that it's just a bigger resting web. There's something else going on.
Zombie spider slave to its host.
That's
And these hosts are slaves to the break, which is coming up next. We'll be right back with more This Week in Science after this.
Explain the things you heard with more than intuition. The line of reason shows the way to go. No conclusion. The methods of hypothesis and patience are the
TWIS has merchandise you might enjoy. Did you know? Head over to twist.org to buy some of our amazing swag. We now have a link directly on our website that goes to our Zazzle store. So go to twist.org, click on the Zazzle store link in the menu bar to start browsing. We have mugs, we have aprons, we have mouse pads, we have Christmas ornaments. We have all sorts of fun things in the Zazzle store. So go head over there from twist.org and buy you or your loved ones some TWIS swag. TWIS is supported by listeners like you. Your donations pay for our hosting, bandwidth, contractors we need to hire, and fun things we try to do for the show. We appreciate any amount. $2, $5, $10, maybe $100. You make this show possible. We currently accept donations a couple of ways. First, we have PayPal donation buttons on each show page on our website. That's www.twist.org. Or second, we started a Patreon account. That's Patreon, patreon.com/thisweekinscience. That's patreon.com/thisweekinscience. It's kind of like a Kickstarter for media producers where you can get stuff in return for your donation. That could be a t-shirt. It could be a hand-drawn piece of artwork by yours truly. It could be a shout out at the show. Whichever your preference, go to the website, listen to the most recent episode, comment on the show, and make a donation. Can't afford a donation? We can always use your help to get more people listening and watching TWIS. Use your social networks for science and tell people to tune into TWIS. That could be through your Twitter or your Facebook or your Google+. Or you could write us an iTunes review. Only if you love the show, of course. But an iTunes review would be great. Or you can just tell 5 of your friends. Tell some of your friends about This Week in Science. We want everyone to get science in their ears every week. So if you can help us spread This Week in Science, you can help us spread the science knowledge far and wide. We thank you for your support in any form. We couldn't do it without you. Thanks, everybody.
Put on a pair of goggles and go looking for the things I couldn't see.
And we're back with more This Week in Science.
What else do you have, Justin?
What does it say there? What's my next story? What am I supposed to bring here? I've got one. Oh, yes, this one. I see it. Okay, let me
Talk about
okay.
kissing.
A kiss is just a kiss as time goes by, but in the moment, the sparks can fly, and with the right chemistry, set hearts afire. Yes, the simple kiss, romantic symbol of love the world round. That is, unless, of course, it isn't. Recent research has found that not only is romantic kissing not the norm in most cultures, Some find it uncomfortable and even flat out repulsive. Wow, who knew, right? Talk about seeing the world from a Western eye perspective on these things and the different modality of our species around the world. Justin Garcia, research scientist at Kinsey Institute in Indiana University, co-author of this new study published in the journal American Anthropologist. The study is titled, "Is the Romantic Sexual Kiss a Near Human Universal?" It looked at 168 cultures throughout the world to better understand where kissing does and does not occur. Using standard cross-cultural methods, this study found that fewer than half of all cultures surveyed, 46%, engage in romantic sexual kissing. Romantic kissing was defined as lip-to-lip contact that may or may not be prolonged. We hypothesized that some cultures would either not engage in romantic sexual kissing or find it to be a strange display of intimacy. But we were surprised to find it was a majority of cultures that fell into this category, says Garcia. This is a real reminder of how Western ethnocentrism can bias the way we think about human behavior. Romantic kissing was most prevalent in the Middle East, where all 10 of the cultures studied engaged in it. And this is the part I don't quite understand. In North America, 55% of cultures engaged in romantic kissing. 55%.
Were they interviewing 12-year-old boys?
Well, I think 55% in North America is kind of an interesting thing because it's saying of cultures. Now, not of people of North America, but of cultures. So North America is a melting pot. So we should kind of see the global norm well represented, right? It's a little askew where our cultures tend to kiss a little bit more here, apparently. It says, along with 70% of Europe and 73% of Asia engaged in this, but there was no evidence of romantic kissing in Central America.
What?
And no ethnographer working in sub-Saharan Africa, New Guinean or Amazonian foragers or horticulturists reported any evidence of romantic kissing in the populations they studied. The research conducted by Garcia and colleagues also found a relationship between social complexity and kissing. The more socially complex and stratified a society is, the higher the frequency of romantic kissing. Interest in the study stemmed from renewed attention to the role of close touch and kissing in people's romantic and sexual lives. Garcia said recent work on the issue has made claims about the universality of erotic kissing, some even claiming 90% of societies engage in the act. However, we realized no one had used standard cross-cultural methods to assess how frequently kissing actually occurs in different societies. But by doing so, we could begin to understand why it might occur in some places, but not others. It is not clear where romantic sexual kissing evolved from. Some animals engage in similar behaviors. I guess chimpanzees are known to French kiss one another. When it comes to human kissing, Garcia points out, it does serve as a way to learn more about a partner, whether one feels there is any chemistry or possibly to assess health via taste and smell, and in some ways to assess compatibility with each other. I guess living in a culture where, I'm making too much of a presumption here, there may be, say, an arranged marriage or something, but then I think that happens in the Middle East a lot. And to have that be one of the highest places of kissing, so that's not it. It's not just that. There is likely a biological underpinning to kissing. It can often involve exchange of pheromones and saliva, and also pathogens, which might be particularly dangerous in societies without oral hygiene. Okay, I could see a lot of reasons why kissing may not take place in cultures without oral hygiene. Yeah.
Toothpaste invented.
But this is only in societies that have come to see the erotic kiss as part of the larger romantic and sexual repertoires. How that shift occurs is still an open question for research. But the interesting takeaway there, the romantic kiss is not universal among humans.
That's pretty interesting. I do remember reporting a story on how swapping spit was a predictor on genetic compatibility.
Yeah. So it's all about your bacteria saying pass, sparks, pass, sparks, right? No, we got enough of those. Ooh, I like the bacteria she's carrying.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, that's so interesting. Yeah, you can't. Culture is such an interesting thing. It's such a widespread.
Wait, are you talking about bacterial culture or?
Uh-huh.
Eh,
I'm talking about romanticism and how it's all relative.
hopefully not. Hopefully you can avoid romance with relatives, but I guess we come from different cultures ourselves.
We do indeed. Speaking of cultures, we live in a culture of stretching. We live in a culture of social media, right? That's part of our culture. Very important to our culture. Well, for the first time ever, social media has discovered a new species of plant. Yes. So a person who was on a trip in Brazil photographed a sundew, which is a type of carnivorous plant. They're the ones who look kind of fuzzy and a little bit damp. And they kind of just look like a long club-ended, almost aloe vera looking plant that just has little arms that poke out everywhere. And yeah, they look fuzzy. They look like they have little drops of water all over them. That's called a sundew, and they're a carnivorous plant. So they have little insects stick to them, and then they roll up their little appendage into the center, and then they digest that little nugget of insect. So
Wow, what a cool plant.
yeah, and there's a lot of different types of sundews out there, but a new species that has been dubbed the magnificent sundew was discovered via Facebook. So somebody went to southeastern Brazil in 2013, posted the picture to their Facebook page, and then experts started looking at it because it looked different, and they discovered that it was this new species of sundew. And this is the first plant to be discovered on Facebook. It is the largest sundew in the Americas, and it is the second largest carnivorous plant in the Americas. So that's pretty interesting that even plants, people just kind of look at your vacation photo and they go, that looks different. And then they have a bunch of experts look at it, and it turns out, whoops, new species.
Awesome. I'm actually surprised a little more of that doesn't happen than gets reported on, but maybe it does. I mean, maybe this is happening at a greater degree than we actually have caught a report.
With animals, with insects, with some other animals that we thought were extinct in certain areas, and then we see them again in a picture on Facebook or something. So it's happened a lot with vertebrates and invertebrates, but not a lot with plants. First time with plants.
And I've heard, and it's happened in archaeology too. I mean, I remember at least early on in Google Earth, a slew of stories of people finding odd arrangements of Earth or strange looking structures and saying, "Wow, look at this! What's this?" And then some archaeologist who's worked in the area going, "Oh, yeah, we're gonna go take a look because that looks like what we've been looking for from airplanes, but didn't happen to see."
Yeah, exactly. So cool. So scientific discoveries, cancer and moles. Is this like the little blind animal, or is this like one of the?
Oh, I speak not of the furry burrowing talpids, no. And not of secret embedded corporate spies, not even of the Mexican chocolate sauce.
Molly?
But the everyday, ordinary, right here on my face, sort of mole.
Molly.
Mole. The benign tumor found somewhere on nearly everywhere on the skin of almost every adult. Scientists have known for years that a mutation of the BRAF gene makes them start growing, but until now haven't understood why it is they stop. They get it. It's this sort of runaway, grow, but then it ends. It stops. It doesn't just continue into a melanoma state. Now, researchers from the Perelman School of Medicine, University of Pennsylvania, have identified a major genetic factor that keeps moles in their usual non-cancerous, no-growth state. Study was published online, first in the journal Cancer Discovery. The BRAF mutation, in quote voice, this is author Todd W. Ridke, MD, PhD, professor of dermatology at Penn. The BRAF mutation that stimulates the initial growth of moles also stimulates the production of a tumor suppressor protein, P15, which ultimately acts as a powerful brake on the further cell division. It's this cell division that ultimately allows the transition from a normal mole into melanoma. When mole cells lose the P15 brake, cells can start dividing again and can progress into their cancerous melanomic state. For their study, Ridke and his colleagues developed a new model of human melanoma. Using tissue engineering to make skin grafts containing human mole cells in which P15 had been removed, they combined it with other mutations known to be important for the development of melanoma and planted them then into mice. So the mouse has this P15-free melanoma mole, and of course, moles progressed. These cells progressed into melanoma. Model tissues are medically relevant because they use the naturally occurring human mole cells in three-dimensional environment of living skin, which allows detailed functional studies. The field hasn't had an experimental system like this before, said lead author Andrew McNeil. He's a research specialist at Ridke's lab. Both moles, melanomas, originate from the same melanin-producing cells, melanocytes, within the skin. Scientists have known for more than a decade that one particular mutation is responsible for the abnormal melanocyte growth that creates the majority of both benign moles and cancerous melanomas. The mutation in a cell growth gene called BRAF causes BRAF to be in an always-on state, continuously promoting cell division. So in moles, cell proliferation typically stops after the cluster of melanocytes has reached a few millimeters. It's about the size of a pencil eraser. That's usually the largest size of moles. Why moles stop growing despite all that BRAF activity has been a long-standing question in the field. To answer the question, Ridke and colleagues studied mole cells isolated directly from normal benign moles removed from patients, compared them to melanocytes isolated from normal non-mole skin. The mole skin had 140 times more P15 than the normal skin melanocytes, and the melanocytes in the normal skin is what turns into melanoma. Comparing cells from the patient melanomas that had originated from previously benign moles, researchers found generally high P15 levels in the mole tissue and very low or undetectable P15 in the melanomas. This suggested that P15 is important for holding regular moles in a benign state. So what was sort of interesting then is they discovered that the BRAF overactivation, the thing that's driving the moles to grow towards melanoma, those cells secrete a signaling molecule, TGFB, which in turn is signaling back to the cell to make the P15, right? So the overactivation triggers a molecule that tells P15, hey, put on the brakes. We got a runaway mole here. Runaway mole. All brake, right? And so this is sort of also why moles sort of grow to a certain diameter typically before they start, right? Because it's during the growth, it's during that runaway growth that they get signaled to stop. And so the more that they're growing, I guess, the larger they get, the more that signal. And so there's a sort of ratio of how big a mole typically will grow. Importance of P15 had up till now largely been underappreciated because many researchers assume that a different but related tumor suppressor protein, P16, did the main growth inhibition in moles. So these are two genes that are very physically close, P15 and P16. In the nuclear DNA, they look kind of like twins. They're both present in moles, and also both are lost in a lot of the melanomas and other cancers. So while these two suppressors are normally there together, they played with it. They put P15 in one, P16 in the other, and saw what happened. In their examples, inserting P15 into the normal cells was enough to halt proliferation completely, whereas inserting P16 only slowed the proliferation. So clearly they're saying P15 is doing things that P16 doesn't. And why is all of this interesting? Because now they can apply this to other forms of cancer as well as this. So there has been because P16 was thought to be the main driver, there's been a lot of research on P16. But now that they realize, nope, P15 is really where it's at, the research can be diverted there. And we may, cancer biologists will have a very important and unique tool in looking at cancer in the context of moles, melanoma, and other cancers as well.
Yeah, we're getting there. We're really.
But who knew? Who knew so much was going? I've got a good. Was it this side? I got like one here, one here. I got like a bunch of moles. I didn't realize there was this whole P15, P16 battle going on in there to prevent them from just
being way
runaway growing. Is that all you got? Come on.
No, I have there.
I got there.
So let's talk about snow leopards for a second. Snow leopards.
I love the snow leopard. Oh, I love the snow leopards. They're so adorable.
There's a million reasons they're so awesome. Yeah. Most of their cool adaptations come from the fact that they live in the high up icy Himalayas. They live up to 6,000 meters. That's about 20,000 feet. That's pretty high for a mammal to live.
They're the Sherpas of the cat family, if you will.
Yes. And they have a very long tail that helps them to balance on the cliffs. They use that tail also as a little scarf to cover their nose when they sleep. Oh. And they have amazing balance. They have that thick fur that helps keep them warm in the cold. Well, you would think also that in these high altitudes where there's not a lot of oxygen, you would need what?
You would need Sherpas.
Besides that,
you would need a steady flow of billy goats, mountain goats.
So there's stuff in our blood that carries oxygen. It's called
Sherpa blood.
Called hemoglobin.
Hemoglobin, but the hemoglobins are different, right? They're different in the Sherpa populations, like in the Himalayas that live really high in the mountains.
They have more hemoglobin, and their hemoglobins are different too. Helps them to carry more oxygen, more effective. So then they can get by in those high altitudes. When we go up there, we're short of breath all the time because our blood is not used to those low oxygen contents. Our hemoglobins are lazy. So you would expect that they would have hemoglobin that would reflect that in the snow leopards as compared to other cats. Turns out they have hemoglobin pretty much exactly the same as other cat species. They have unusually oxygen affinities. Now, here's the big asterisk, right? Is that all of this came from zoo animals.
Oh, okay.
Lions, tigers, leopards, snow leopards, panthers. And they looked at the hemoglobin. So basically what they wanted to see was, do they have a predisposition for hemoglobin that carries oxygen very well? So does their hemoglobin have a better oxygen affinity just naturally? Are they born with it?
Right.
And no, they're all exactly the same. And as far as they can tell, they're not better equipped. So now the question is, if you put them up there, do their hemoglobins become more efficient? Do their structure or function change? All these things. The scientists' current hypothesis is that they think that they just breathe harder.
So I would say there's sort of three things that jump out at me on this. One is exactly what you stated. Is it something that it's sort of like the opposite of altitude sickness? Does the blood hemoglobin adjust with altitude over time? Are these zoo animals hemoglobin being able to actively reflect their environment currently as it is? Is this something that changes over time? Or is it just genetic by birth? If it's genetic by birth and that's it, then yeah, then there's something on there. Then I think, well, Does this mean perhaps that the snow leopard hasn't been at this altitude that long historically? Is this not a long evolved thing? Is this a recent move to higher and higher altitudes? And then the third one is, maybe this is why they're so elusive in the wild. Maybe they tire out really easily and sleep a lot. And that's why we have a hard time tracking or finding them in the wild, because they're just in the den somewhere sleeping because they're so oxygen deprived all the time.
Yeah, exactly. So we're not sure exactly what's going on here. They tested a bunch of different things. They tested the amino acid swap that compromises the ability of all other cat hemoglobins to carry oxygen. And they measured oxygenation of the cat's hemoglobin. And they tested it with and without 2,3-diphosphoglycerate, DPG, which helps hemoglobin offload oxygen when it's required. So this is a protein that we see exhibited in other situations in animals in high altitude. But it showed weak oxygen binding in all of the cat hemoglobins, and they were unresponsive to this DPG that we see in other vertebrates that help them to offload oxygen. So yeah, all of our expected adaptations in snow leopard blood were not present. So there's something else going on here. Either there's something going on within a lifetime in a snow leopard, but it really seems like the scientists don't believe that. It really seems like they really just think that these snow leopards are cycling air faster through their body. They're breathing hard. They're panting all the time.
Interesting.
I don't know. It's interesting stuff.
Yeah.
Justin, what do you still have for me? Do you have the moon?
Okay, let's do the moon, but I'll do the story. And you got to bring up, lock yourself and screen share the picture. Right.
Okay. I'm opening the link as we speak.
Okay. This picture we're gonna have up for the video able audience is from a NASA camera aboard the Deep Space Climate Observatory Discover satellite. Captured a unique view of the moon as it moved in front of the sunlit side of the Earth last month.
Whoa.
Right? So this is the dark side of the moon that we're looking at, which is, of course, not dark all the time. It's just the side that's always not facing us. So this is the moon we never get to see. And it's just a beautiful shot. You should go Google this if you can't see it now. And it shows that far side or dark side of the moon, which doesn't have the same look of the moon. Doesn't have the same dark space areas as we're used to seeing.
In there.
Yeah, there's no man in the moon. There's a couple craters looking things, a couple splotches, but it looks like a different moon. It's really fascinating. And it's crossing with the Earth completely in the background. It looks like it's headed towards California-ish. There's some interesting artifacts in this. They're saying that this was a 30-second exposure. And so there is, on the right edge, there's this sort of greenish hue and a little black line as the moon is rotating. It caused some sort of little color adjustment to the camera viewing it. But I've got, also for those of you who aren't video, I've got the Earthrise as a backdrop here to the show for the video. So I've got the Earth, a half Earth in the sky with a little bit of moon landscape behind me. This is really an incredible picture. This is really a beautiful, unique view of the little blue ball upon which we're all spinning around with our moon from an angle that we never get to see.
Yeah. That's intense, man.
Yeah, that's cool.
It's like camping. It's intense. Do you have any more stories, Justin, or are we all done?
I think we did it.
That's so great. So I had a great show. Did you have a great show?
I had a great show. And I think we did the show in record-ish time.
Ish. Yeah.
Like we kept to the...
Yeah. So I am going to do our Patreon shout-outs. This is everyone that we are so thankful to for supporting us at patreon.com/thisweekinscience. We would like to thank Kevin Donald Wesley Ballard, John Ratnaswamy, Steve DeBell, Gerald Sorrells, Greg Guthman, Dave Nabor, Jason Dozier, Matthew Litwin, Eric Knapp, Andreas Akestad, Jason Roberts, Patrick Cohn, Shane and Tara Ginsburg, Richard Onemus, Byron Lee, E.O., Bob Calder, Jaron Lysette, Ed Dyer, Ulysses Adkins, Brian Codron, Jake Jones, Trainor84, Katie, Edvardus Rimkus, Brian Hedrick, Cassie Lester, Sarah Chavis, Stephen Sorowiak, Layla, Paul D. Disney, Marshall Clark, Charlene Davidson Henry, Don Komarechka, Larry Garcia, Randy Mazuka, Tony Steele, Dave Friedel, Daryl Lambert, Kevin Parachan, Steve Mushinsky, Brooke Kennedy, Phil Clark, Rodney Lewis, Braxton Howard, Phil Nadeau, Rick Ramus, Saul Good Sam, Matt Sutter, Emma Grenier, Miranda McKinnett, Philip Shane, James Dobson, Steve Goodwin, Kurt Larson, Stefan Insam, Michael George, Craig Landon, Russell Jensen, Mountain Sloth, Jim Drapeau, Darren Lute, Tara Payne, Alex Wilson, John H. Maloney, Jason Olds, James, Noah Wiles, Paul West, Ed Bennett, Alec Doty, Illuma Lama, Joe Wheeler, Dougal Campbell, TMRO, Miko Pakala, Craig Porter, Adam Mishkun, Aaron Luthen, Marjorie, Paul Stanton, Scott Lajewski, David Simmerly, Tyler Harrison, Ben Rothig, Columbo Ahmed, Gary Swinsberg. That's it. Thank you, everyone, for supporting the show. We could not do it without you. Also, remember that you can help us out simply by telling your friends about TWIS. That could be through your social networks, telling your close friends to listen to your latest episode or your favorite episode. It could even be adding a good iTunes review if you like the show. On our next show, once again, we'll be broadcasting live online at 8 p.m. PST on twis.org/live, where you can watch and join our chat room. But don't worry if you can't make it. You can find our past episodes at youtube.com/thisweekinscience or twis.org.
Yes, thank you for enjoying the show. TWIS is also available as a podcast. Just Google This Week in Science in your iTunes directory, or if you have one of those other mobile-type devices, you can look for TWIS for Droid and anything Android, or simply This Week in Science and anything else Apple.
For more information on anything you've heard here today, show notes will be available on our website. That's www.twis.org. That's TWIS.org, where you can also make comments and start conversations with the hosts as well as other listeners.
Or you can contact us directly. Email Kirsten at thisweekinscience.com, Justin at twistmeaning@gmail.com, or Blair at blairbaz@twist.org. Just be sure to put TWIS, TWIS, somewhere in the subject line, or your email will be spam filtered into oblivion. You can also hit us up on the Twitter, where we are at TWIS Science, at Dr. Kiki, at Jacksonfly, and at Blair's Menagerie. We love your feedback. If there's a topic you would like us to cover or address, a suggestion for an interview, a haiku that comes to you in the night, please let us know.
We'll be back here next week, and we hope you'll join us again for some more great science news.
And if you've learned anything from today's show, remember,
it's all in your head.
This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science, it's the end of the world. So I'm setting up shop, got my banner unfurled. It says the scientist is in, I'm gonna sell my advice. Show them how to stop the robots with a simple device. I'll reverse global warming with a wave of my hand. And all it'll cost you is a couple of grand. 'Cause this week's science is coming your way. So everybody listen to what I say. I use the scientific method for all that it's worth, and I'll broadcast my opinion all over the earth. 'Cause it's This Week in Science. science. This week in science. This week in science. 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 This week in science. This week in science. This week in science. 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 I've got one disclaimer, and it shouldn't be news. That what I say may not represent your views, but I've done the calculations and I've got a plan. If you listen to the science, you may just yet understand that we're not trying to threaten your philosophy. We're just trying to save the world from jeopardy. Jeopardy. And this week in science is coming your way. So everybody listen to everything we say. And if you use our method instead of rolling a die, we may rid the world of toxoplasma gondii. Cause it's this week in science. This week in science. This week in science. 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 This week in science. This week in science. This week in science. 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 I've got a laundry list of items I want to address. From stopping global hunger to dredging Loch Ness. I'm trying to promote more rational thought, and I'll try to answer any question you've got. But how can I ever see the changes I seek when I can only set up shop 1 hour a week? This week in science is coming your way. You better just listen to what we say. And if you've learned anything from the words that we've said, then please just remember it's all in your head. Cause it's this week in science. This week in science. This week in science. 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 This week in science. This week in science. This week in science. 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 This week in 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 science.
Whoops. Okay, we're waiting for Justin to get back. In the meantime, I'm very sad that I missed last week, and I look forward to hearing it. I have not had time to sit down and watch it. I was hoping to listen to it on iTunes. So I will get caught up on what happened last week once I have the time to listen to it on iTunes. I'm very excited to hear it. I don't normally listen to the whole episodes because I don't like to listen to myself talk. But since I won't be on it, I will be more than happy to listen and enjoy the science from that side of the headphones. I'm very excited to listen to the show from that side of the headphones. It'll be fun. How was the show last week, Justin?
Did we do this? Oh, it was so awesome.
Yeah, you
oh my gosh.
Snake story that I was dying to report on this week.
Oh, the boa constrictor story. Yeah, I got to that one first. I've been finding a lot of animal stories lately.
Yeah.
I got a couple in there.
Probably because I bet I know why. Because it's probably a cycle of people trying to get their masters or PhDs. And so everybody published all at once.
Could be that. But I got to tell you. The co-host we brought aboard last week, amazing job.
Yeah, I know. I'm really sad that I missed
amazing job. So, and I wish that we had a little bit more. No, tonight's show is perfect. Take nothing away. I wish we had a little bit more heads up because I would have seen if we could have gotten her in again. She's my first choice for if I can't make it. I want you guys to call her. And have her be my on-call replacement because
say that you wanted to replace me.
No, okay, great. Okay, so now you sympathize with my first 5 years of being on the show, right?
Well,
yeah, I was waiting. She might find somebody better.
Considering I just spent 4 days repping this show in the state, I would hope that I wouldn't get kicked off right now.
No. So here's what it was though. First of all, she's a science communicator. This is what she's doing, right? She's got a physics degree, but she's doing science communication. But she said, right, that she got turned on to this show by a science teacher at high school, and would have been there in the early days of our podcasting. And it was one of her inspirations to do science communication, which I just wanted to, I was broke down and cried. Yeah. So anyway, yeah, if I'm not a physics girl, which you can go find on the interwebs, she does these amazing, I think, was it you who brought the plate video with this little swirl? I don't know. She has videos on the YouTube.
I remember that one.
Yeah, I don't remember who brought that story, but we talked about it a little bit, or looked at it at one point.
No.
Yeah, but physics girl, you can find her on the YouTubes. She is if I get struck by lightning so badly that I can't do the show for a little while, or this is my chosen replacement. This is who I want representing this seat right here.
Oh, see, Identity 4 says my mic was quiet. I was worried about that before we started because it was quiet last time I used this setup, but we spent like 20 minutes trying to make sure the sound was good, so I'm surprised.
So right here you sound fine to me. I don't know, but maybe during the show you get comfortable and you start doing this.
I mean, I guess
that's possible, because it does make a big difference whether you're right here on the mic or back over here somewhere. But I never saw anybody complain during the show, so it couldn't have been too bad.
Yeah. Identity 4 just said he's going to fix it, which if you're really bad, he has to do that. I'm sorry, Identity 4.
Ooh. Identity 4, you must have some free time, because I've done that sort of editing. That's rough. That is really rough. Unless you just raise the audio for the whole show, in which case I'm going to be a screaming maniac.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, go ahead. Just do it that way. It's probably no one will notice.
Oh boy. So I did not bring the award with me today because we did not win.
Might I ask who did win?
It's a show called You Are Not So Smart, which I guess I'm gonna have to listen to now.
Oh.
Yeah, I was kind of bummed because about half of the people that won weren't there.
Yeah, so it's like if you show up, you should win, right?
I feel like they should be disqualified. I dragged my butt over there.
So Identity 4, yes, it is tedious work, not hard, just tedious. Yes, I know. Oh, friendly face. So Identity 4, if you ever want to work on a radio play, please let me know, because I have this tedious task ahead of me. And putting together the latest installment.
That was fun. I want to do more of that.
Wait, the last one we recorded is we have to redo.
It's gone. I'm ready to do it
studio.
I'm more prepared now. I'm gonna do it like a voice. It'll be better.
There's another one that's all done and ready to go. It just has to get line by line edited together, and I got about almost halfway through with this. Before my 2-year-old took over my free time. But we'll see. You have
like sounds happening.
I do?
Yeah, like you're moving things.
I'm sorry, I am. I'm flailing now in the after show. So.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I heard it in the show too. I don't know if I
Oh, rights for robots. In my heart, TWIS always wins. And actually, the same time we were kind of figuring out whether or not we had one or not one, how come I don't know? I'm terrible with names. Sorry, Diana, I can't remember your name. Let me go. I gotta go look up the show notes.
I wanted to steal the awards since half of the awards are just hanging out backstage because people weren't there to accept them.
You should have just grabbed one and taken a picture with it. And been like, oh yeah.
One person like Roman Mars got 2 of them. I kind of wanted to be like,
who?
He does this podcast that apparently is very famous called 99% Invisible, and I was not aware of it, but it's supposed to be really good.
I think we have the best podcast nobody ever listened to. That's what I'm
So
starting to think.
here's the other thing that I thought was very funny. So I was walking around and people would ask me, "Oh, how long have you been podcasting?" And I'm like, "Well, I've been on the podcast for 3.5 years." And they'd go, "Oh." And then I'd be like, "But TWIS has been happening for like almost 15." And they're like,
Nobody's that old that could have been doing technology stuff that long ago.
"Yeah, we started before there was a podcast section on iTunes."
We started before there was an internet. Diana Cowan's the name.
On a website. People are like,
Diana Cowan is the name. She's my she's the person you guys have to call in the event of my death or
okay.
merely my absence. And would have called her tonight had we had a little bit more forewarning of the Kiki list situation. And I'm wishing Kiki some well wishes here, as she's the lone survivor, the last standing member of her family and I think extended family unit that hasn't been put down by some kind of super bug.
Uh-huh. I know, such a bummer. I wasn't here last week. She's not here this week. We're still not reunited. It's very upsetting.
The only thing that is consistent throughout each episode of This Week in Science is me.
Except that's not true, because just like a month ago you were gone for one.
I was in Disneyland for a day. Come on, that doesn't count.
Yeah.
I was in the happiest place on earth that isn't this. The next happiest place. This is my favorite thing to do.
Yeah, I'm pretty happy to be back doing this, because it was kind of weird to be at that event and having not broadcast just a few days before, having missed a broadcast. It felt kind of disjointed and weird.
Yeah. So this is like, of course, I'm 10 years in. You're 3.5 years in. Yeah, we're both hooked on the cycle, the weekly cycle, right? It's like
a weekly fix.
Right? It kind of is. It's sort of like your whatever point in the week you are, you look to, okay, this is this day, I got to work this day, to work this day, then I'll get to do TWIS.
Yeah.
And I'll get back to the show.
There's also, though, I'm trying to figure out how to explain this, but it's kind of like you're ramping up to it.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's this like denouement on Thursday where you're like, I'm just going to go home and go to bed. It's my day of rest.
Yeah.
And then like 2 to 3 days before TWIS, I'm doing all sorts of TWIS things leading up.
Mine's usually 2 to 3 hours before, but I get it. Yeah. There's a point where you kick into gear. I find that window of time shrinks as time has gone by. I think after the first couple of weeks or months, right after the show, I was looking for next week's show. I was like, all right, let's bring it again. All right. And now it's like I feel like I can get it done like having a good 3-4 hours before the show. I can get everything ready, set, go.
Oh my gosh, look at that picture. It's hilarious. I am way quieter.
Oh, are you going back to are you watching the show and some sort of
Look at Identity 4. Just put in a picture of the sound file. Look at it.
Let me see. Oh, look, he's got like circling images too. Yeah. And so easy to identify in this where you're talking and just raise the audio. But that is, I've done this. It is exactly a tedious task.
It's a pretty big difference, though.
It's time consuming.
I wonder why this keeps happening. Like, here, is this
okay? So
is this better?
Yeah. Okay. That is better. So but now sit back in your relaxed state.
Yeah, like here.
Yeah, and you drop off a decibel or 4, right? Like this is what happens.
So it should be here.
Yeah.
I should have it at 9.
Oh, all the time.
On the game.
Yeah.
I was trying to not have it at 9. I felt like that was going to start to
No,
distort.
it isn't. Actually, I think mine might even be up all the way. I think mine was at 9 too, I guess. I was way up there. But
See? This is why we need our studio. Buy that church.
yeah. I am. I found all the paperwork I need to send them. It's getting faxed over. It's this whole process. It's a multi-step process of people who know what they're doing much more than I do. But yes, I'm working very hard on purchasing a 1,200 square foot church on a half acre of land that can be converted into a homestead / studio space.
Well, that'd be pretty fun.
That would be...
Yuba is where it's going to be?
No. YOLO.
Oh, YOLO.
Yeah. Like as in you only live once.
Yeah. YOLO. That's hella far.
Yes.
That's so far for me.
Mm-hmm.
That's... Oh, it's 2 hours away.
Well, it should take you almost the same time. It should add 20 minutes.
Yeah,
it can't be
20 minutes from Davis.
Yeah, it's 20 minutes from Davis. It can't take you 2 hours. Well, I don't know how you drive.
I drive like someone who obeys speed limits.
Okay, I drive like somebody who understands the implied speed you're able to actually travel on a roadway. So I can get to your place in an hour, but it's going to take you 2 hours to get here. I get it. Yeah.
Yeah, because I don't want a speeding ticket.
I think you're actually at more risk at getting pulled over for driving too slow on the 80.
That's not true.
I think it is. I think they actually pull over people who are going a mile or two under, more so than they pull over people who are going 15 to 20 over. Because that's the flow of traffic.
Yeah, well, I've gotten one too many speeding tickets to mess with that.
Yes, it does still actually. There's not an upper floor on this church. They do still have a church bell that we could ring out the next TWIS episode on, I guess. There is the altar thing there, that sort of...
Oh, that's weird.
Some sort of carved thing behind where the preacher person would stand. I don't know, but the whole deal is it's going to get converted over. We're going to convert a church.
So we'll have to put cushions on the pews.
It's okay.
Kneeling rests. Take those out completely, because none of that. And then somehow change the altar, put up a studio like glass situation, and then some speakers maybe.
So what's really interesting and strange is there's high glass that is like a yellowish orange color, right? It's kind of orange, these windows that they have there. And really, I can see taking some black masking tape and a light box on the outside, and you'll have like the TWIS logo blaring in from every window.
That's pretty sweet.
Yeah, it's kind of perfect there. There is the love of the idea of converting a church into a home of science is the progress that society takes it in that direction, sort of. But it's also why there are certain challenges in purchasing the property. Because it's not a residence, you can't do a normal kind of mortgage thingy on it. So I'm working with people of finance, idea, stratagems. I don't know what it is. But I've got to convert it. I've got to add a kitchen and a bathroom, a proper bathroom and a kitchen to this place. And then it can be called residential. And then I can get the proper loans, so it's going to be, we'll see if it happens. But it would be ideal. And also, because it's on a half an acre, the main building, the 1,250 square feet main building, is sitting adjacent to an empty lot. And that empty lot is basically a 1/4 acre lot. So we could also build something there, you know. We could build a TWIS hotel, a TWIS bed and breakfast, a TWIS science museum, a science island, if you will, a refuge from the rest of the world, a sanctuary for science-minded people,
Little TV studio.
or a garden.
Shorts.
But also a really big garden. It's kind of a tiny farm. That could be there too.
So I was asking around at this thing about video podcasts, about video hosting, about live video hosting, and I did not run into a single person who does a live video feed besides us.
Yeah, no, it's extremely uncommon.
I mean, Twit does it because they have a studio for that, but I didn't talk to any independents or even any other groups that were part of a network that did it.
Right. So my favorite shows to listen to via the podcast, right? Radio Lab and This American Life, right? Those are completely pre-recorded, and they get to go in and do the tedious task of editing, as well as polish, pizzazz, and production value. We're sticking true to our roots. We started as a live radio show. We're keeping the podcast as a live podcast.
Yep.
We're doing things most people are afraid to do. And there is in a practice of having done so, right? The neurons, right? Not receiving the information they expected to receive are getting really good at adjusting in real time to them. So I think if anybody needed public speakers on subjects of science, you'll find a much better crew here than anywhere else.
Yeah, it's one of those things where when you do it enough, you're like, you see other people public speaking, you like itch to join in.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay. I can help you with this. I got you getting there. You know who's okay, this is totally off the subject. You know who's, and I figured out it's some sort of physical abnormality of the esophagus. But that's one of the Republican candidates, Rubio. Remember, Rubio had this sort of infamous State of the Union response where he kept like reaching for the water.
Mm-hmm.
And then he would continue talking for a little while, and then he had to reach awkwardly for the water. He has some sort of dry esophagus problem. I watched some other interview with him, and they had a huge glass of water sitting on the table, but it was, I guess, too close to that State of the Union speech because he was afraid to touch it. And so he would be like, just fighting this dry mouth, this desire to be able to clear his throat, but not reach for the water. And then he did this more recent commentary on something where he had like a Dixie cup of water that he was taking a sip of as he was giving the speech. This is going to dog him throughout his whole thing. Although I guess I have the same, I think I have the same defect. Because if I was running for president, I would have to be occasionally holding up a Lagunitas little something. Mm-hmm. And so what I think we need to do about taxes is, just pardon me a moment. Oh, yeah, that's good. Where was I? Oh, yes, abortion. But yeah, there's something to doing a live show also. I think the energy that we have is the actual energy, and we don't do. I would love to redo almost every single take of a disclaimer I've ever done, because I know I've screwed all of them up because I wrote them. So I know I said them all wrong. Like, I know I've messed up every single one of them to some degree. And for that, I would love to do the retake. For the disclaimer, I would love to pre-record that and polish it and have that there. But, you know, there's something fun about having the little screw-ups in the episode, too.
Yeah, it prepares you for a different type of it's very different.
Wait a sec. Wait a sec. Are you advertising for another job in the chat room?
Not another job. It would
If any of you are watch or listen to podcasts or shows that you think I'd be a helpful voice on, I would love to be a guest.
Yes.
What is that? What is that? What are you trying to get off the show for? Hey,
stop.
Diana Cowan, if you're watching,
Let me speak.
call me.
Let me speak.
I have a full-time position for you sooner than we may have thought.
Hey. Hey. This is twofold. The number one is to improve our reach. So I can go to shows and say, this is Blair from This Week in Science, Blair's Animal Corner, blah, 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 and talk about animals on other shows. That is the number one priority, and that's why I put it in there. Because
actually, that's a great idea.
Yeah.
And actually, yours is our most segmentable. As I think we've discussed before.
Well, Kiki is a great neuroscience person, and she does that a lot, and she already has as Dr. Kiki.
Yeah, but we also do, her and I on the show itself are sort of generalists, which means we'll talk about, I mean, we both have the things we sort of gravitate towards, those sort of stories, but you're the animal corner.
Exactly.
Which could be its own animal corner anywhere in any corner of the interwebs.
So I would like to go on to any other show where it's valid and makes sense to be Blair Basdrich from This Week in Science and insert there and hopefully get some people from that niche listening to us as well. Because that's one thing that that I did take away from this conference was that it's not like your TV show competing for people's eyeballs at a specific time. People who listen to podcasts listen to a lot of podcasts.
Yes.
And most of them would be happy to listen to another podcast. So all we need
to be part of everybody's audio repertoire.
Exactly. So we just need to find people that would like this show and have them add us to their podcast feed. And the easiest way to do that is to go on other shows that they're already listening to. So that's why I wrote that in there. So if anyone knows about shows that could do with an animal zoologist, opinionologist, biologist to do a little guest spot, let me know. Give me a shout. BlairBazDrich.org.
I've got one.
Menagerie.
I've got one for you.
Yeah.
You need to send an email to Mark Maron. And include an 8x10
toxoplasmosis.
Yeah, and include a 8x10 glossy full picture. Send it along.
Of me with a
he's got the cats, and you can tell that they've altered his brain.
Yeah, of course they have.
But apparently Mark Maron, so what else is news, is a mega star in the podcasting world.
Yes, because of Barack Obama. So he was one of the speakers at this thing that I was at, and
Was he really?
Yeah, I saw him like 5 times, and I smiled at him. But whenever he had a moment where I could have gone up to him, I didn't want to be one of those people that's like, "Oh my God, Mark Maron, will you take a picture with me? Oh my God, you're so awesome! I love your show."
Actually, Blair, it wouldn't have worked anyway. Mark he's attracted to a certain type of woman.
Yeah, I'm too old for him. I know.
No. That's not it at all. Mark Maron does not, as much as he doesn't not discriminate by age, he also doesn't discriminate by age. You're simply not. You don't send a vibe of broken and dangerous enough for Mark Maron. Mark Maron requires a relationship that he knows going in is going to end badly, and the person has to be physically carrying emotional and psychological baggage with them around. You don't put that off at all. I don't think he would see you as dangerous enough to attempt to incorporate into his list of people who he has.
Okay, but I didn't even mean for that. I meant that like cool guy, and I would have wanted to just be like, hey, dig what you do, buddy. Like, here's what I do. Like, just have a conversation. But that was not an option because he was being fangirl followed everywhere he went, and I didn't want to like wait in a line to have his attention for us.
Well, this is what it's been like every public appearance I've made on behalf of TWIS too, and I get it. You know, you're like,
I was mobbed. So.
yeah. It's always the way it is. Except, of course, mine isn't actually. It's not usually. Typically, what's kind of disturbing. It's like it's not usually a girl fan crowd. It's usually a guy fan crowd that's surrounding me at the TWIS events. I'm not sure if we're in the right.
Your beer bottle right now? Are you like?
Oh, I'm messing with the mic stand.
I was having trouble hearing what you were saying because you were doing that. Go ahead, continue. You get the guy fanboys, not the.
So
girl.
it's like TWIS is like my '66 Thunderbird in many, many ways. Pull the '66 Ford Thunderbird up, go into a spot, come back out. Be totally awesome if there were like 3 or 4 hot chicks standing around going, nice wheels, dude. But that's never who it was. There's always like a bunch of 50 to 60-year-old guys going, I remember when I owned that. That's an old school muscle. This is who it attracted. And I came to the idea of realization. It's like, really what I need to get is like an 89 Cabriolet Volkswagen in pink with some fuzzy pink dice. Then I'll come out and there'll be a whole bunch of chicks around my car going, oh my God, what a cute car. Let's go for a spin. Right? But it's all about, no, women don't flock to Justin.
What is TGFQ? He sent a link that I can't. There's like no heading on the page. GFQ. What is it? I don't understand. My goodness.
Oh yeah, it would also it would be the convertible cabriolet, of course.
The guy from Queens? What? I'm so confused. Okay, someone asked what swag I got at the conference. I'm gonna.
Thank God for Quaaludes. Yeah, totally.
Is that what it is?
No, I have no idea.
The guys from Queens. Hold on, I'm gonna grab my swag. Hold on.
All right, let's all freak out Blair by my not being here when she gets back.
So, I got a pair of WordPress sunglasses, which I brought to my car. And then I got this, which is pretty sweet. It's like a backup power supply for like anything that a USB goes into. So I'm pretty stoked on that. That just came in my little goodie bag. And then I also got a book about, I don't know, marketing, being an entrepreneur. Let's see. Oh, gosh. Uh-oh. I think my backdrop might fall down in a minute. Okay. So I got this. The Invisible Selling Machine. Not sure. 5 steps to crafting an automated evergreen email campaign. Yeah, I don't really need that. I'm not really planning an email campaign, but thanks for the book, I guess. And then, yeah, this little guy. I'm pretty stoked on this, actually. My phone dies a lot, so this will be great. Blue light. Where did Justin go? All right, let's see. Guys from Queens do interesting podcasts, huh? 2 guys from Queens. Brass animals. Okay, so yes, to be fair, I went to the Dallas Zoo and I post a lot of pictures of the brass animals. That's because it's easier to take a selfie with the brass ones. But I did take pictures of the real animals, and I promise I'll start posting them tomorrow. But let's see. There's, I have pictures of naked mole rats. Look at that. Naked mole rat. Ooh. What else? Here's their exhibits are really great, but some of them had mesh, so it was kind of hard to see things. So there's koala. There's a tiger skeleton. Ooh. That's definitely getting tweeted tomorrow. Ooh. Asian small-clawed otter. Adorable. And lots of dinosaur pictures. Here's a monitor lizard. Monitor lizard. There we go. Here's a Grand Canyon rock iguana. Right here. Right there. And yeah, the Dallas Zoo was great. I had a great time there. There's no Aldabra tortoise. They're enormous. It was too hot, though. I'm not made for that climate. Clearly, it was rough. They have a hair show. So, need to go where there are a bunch of geeks and set up TWIS shop. Yes, that's what I need to do. So, I need to find some show that wants somebody to just like spout ridiculous animal facts. That would be great.
Wait, I got something in the mail recently.
Yeah. Yeah, Whiskey Renegade, they didn't tell places or anything. We just didn't win. But we were nominated, and it was fun when I was introducing myself to people. They would say, like, oh, you guys got nominated for an award. They'd be like, hey, she's one of the nominees over here. Come meet this woman. That was really cool.
All right, hang on. This is a piece of lapis I got recently.
Of what?
This is lapis.
That's fake. What's
No.
lapis?
This is a giant piece of lapis. It's humongous.
What is it?
It's an 11-pound block of lapis.
What is it?
It's a rock. It's all it does.
Tell me about lapis.
It's from Pakistan. This piece.
Okay,
Hey,
you're losing your privilege now.
What do you mean?
Explain, because you're taking too long.
Oh, what?
Lapis is a bright blue metamorphic rock consisting largely of lazurite used for decoration and in jewelry. They make a bright blue pigment from crushing it.
They used to. Yeah, they used to. Also, it used to be traded like gold along, or was worth more than gold along the spice trail.
How'd you get this thing?
I just ordered it. It's apparently it grows.
How
and
that chunk?
I ordered it on the eBay from like that piece I got for a couple $100. But if you
$100
went
more than I would spend on a rock.
right, I know. If you go into a normal lapidary store, normal rock store, that's like a $2,000 piece. But I found a connection down in Pakistan. I may have put myself on a list and ordering it, but it's gorgeous. It's the biggest piece. I've got like other little pieces that here and there, but this is the biggest. Yeah, I'm gonna turn it into a necklace, an 11-pound amulet. Right?
Good. So if I had $200,
It doesn't. Yeah, it doesn't do anything, Dave.
I would buy. Oh gosh, what's it called? The hold on. I'm gonna figure out what it's called. A piece of equipment. It is called. Everyone's gonna laugh at me when they see what I couldn't remember. It's very silly that I couldn't remember. Zoom H4n.
Huh?
That's what I would buy. It is a digital audio recorder-y thing. And then I could go record interviews or record animal sounds. That so that I can make a bunch of TWIS shorts. They'd be audio only because I don't have a video camera and I'm not putting that money down. But I would like to buy an audio recorder. I think that'd be awesome.
That would be a good addition. Yeah.
Audio only shorts, those I could pump those out pretty quick. I could just record them and I could probably figure out how to use GarageBand, or I could send them elsewhere to be edited. So that's on my wish list right now, is I'd love to do like once weekly, maybe 2 minutes on an animal or a story I didn't get to that was otherwise awesome, or interviews with people out in the world.
Yeah, you should totally do it. Get one.
Yeah, I need monies.
Money grows on trees, doesn't it?
I wish.
Isn't that where it comes from?
Blair, you have a phone already. I could use my phone.
Oh, yeah, that could work too.
In order to use my phone, I would need some sort of adapter that goes from a microphone to my phone. And then I would need to buy an app that records and edits audio. So it would be cheaper, but maybe by like $30. So I might just rather get the audio recorder. Just a thought.
I think you should get one of those. Try it out. I've thought about those for years, but never pulled the trigger on one.
Yeah, that's my thing. I have emailed a few people on eBay that have these things up that they like say they never used, but nobody's ever responded to me.
That's suspicious.
I should just buy it off of Amazon. Just pull the trigger, but I don't know. I don't know, man.
Well, so yeah, you should. We'll incorporate this into the funding for this studio project thing. We'll make sure that gets infiltrated into the overall budget of the build out.
Huzzah. And then get me on a couple shows. Spread the TWIS far and wide. Yeah, I also I threw in the stuff about the iTunes reviews today because
That's a good idea.
I looked on our iTunes and the first review that's listed is from 2008.
There's some that are more recent, but
But they got buried somehow.
yeah,
We just need to make ones relevant and at the top of the review list that are relevant.
So call to action to anybody within earshot of this chat room or this deep into the after show. If you're still watching this on the YouTube, you should have found something better by now.
Well, I said it
Uh,
twice during the real show too. So
Oh, good. But yeah, go to the iTunes if you have an iTunes account and look up the show if you haven't already and review the heck out of it.
yes. So I'm looking now. So
Yeah, I buy stuff like rocks. Also, wait. Oh, where's the other thing I got? Hang on. I'll be right back.
so yeah, so the reviews, I guess you can't sort them, which is really frustrating. But 2006, 2006, 2006, 2007, 2006 are the first 5 that show up. So it would be cool if we could get some.
I also got some.
Also, I would say if you could just only write an iTunes review if you have nice things to say too, that would be great.
Let's see here. I also got some fish.
Oh, some prehistoric fish.
Yeah, 50-million-year-old fish.
Nice. They're.
Yeah.
I bet they're not real.
They're real. What do you mean they're not real? Why are you so suspicious of things?
That's your budget. You just bought a rock.
Yeah, that's what I did with the budget. I bought a rock.
Yeah, that's
we were
how
the
my
first
dad
time
found this podcast, so that I found the podcast, so that I ended up here, was because it was in the top 10 science podcasts on iTunes.
That's because there were 10 science podcasts when we first started.
So this was like 4 years ago. I don't.
Hot Rod, beware of rock polishing. It is a intensively loud project that you'd be undertaking. Yeah, thanks, Corey. Yeah, I don't plan on eating those fish. Yeah, I believe they'd be a little rank at this point. Oh, CR1's pet rock died. Oh, I'm so sorry.
Oh, we're still in here. If you just search science in iTunes, or 1, 2, 3.
Oh, that's a good question. I don't even have an iTunes account, so I don't even know like how to look for us there. But we used to be under like some sort of health and technology. It was some sort of weird category that they had us in. They didn't actually have a science category back in the day. It was like health and technology or some sort of vacuous weird thing. And it was us and people who were giving like medical advice or something.
Interesting. Weird. Very interesting.
What are you finding?
Just looking around. iTunes. So yeah, so if I go into iTunes on my computer,
can we read iTunes reviews?
I don't know if you want to.
What do you mean? Why would you say this? Hang on, I'm gonna go find. I don't think I have iTunes on here, so I don't know if I can even see it.
It's never a fun game to do. Is to read reviews because you see.
What are you talking about?
You see,
people love the show. People love us. I assume the reviews are all glowing.
No, so
and saying how awesome we are.
So let's see, where is it? Ratings and reviews. So our average score is over 4 stars. Like
that's good.
Very good. But of course, you're only gonna see things, like.
What do you mean?
Okay. Recent. Oh, here's one. TWIS Terrific from June 4th, 2015.
I remember writing this one.
You wrote it?
No, I'm just kidding.
Enjoy the weekly update of science with the blending of intelligent, insightful, and witty perspective. Hope TWIS continues for years to come. Yay! Okay. This is cool. There's some more recent stuff. but not a lot. It skips back down to 2014 and then 2013. There's not a lot of recent stuff on here. And that's how we get higher up in the iTunes ranking is reviews. So, oh my goodness. Someone spelled my name wrong in here.
What?
Put an E at the end.
Well, I can't. It won't let me. I see. It's asking me to download iTunes. I guess I'll do that. We got time, right?
Oh, here's an interesting one. I love science, but I love God more, and science is merely an observation of God's creation.
Which is why I want to put our recording studio in a church that nobody's using anymore. To prove the opposite of that point.
My goodness. I've been listening to TWIS for 6 years, this person says. They love the podcast. Make science news entertaining. Cute.
Oh, okay. I'm in.
Nice.
I so wanted to enjoy this podcast. This is like the first one.
Keep it positive. Keep it positive.
Huh?
Go to no. Sort by most recent.
Word of warning for any of those who've had enough adolescence. It's sophomoric and science light. I want to see the recent. Okay, go to recent ones.
Mm-hmm.
Why I reviewed it. Oh, that's the I love God more than science one.
Yeah.
This show is amazing, funny, educational, and awesome. These are going to be boring because I already agree with them. I'm going to go with the most critical.
No.
Okay, the is very lame. All right. Okay. Foreign writing or illiterate. Only for people who desperately mix their fix of TV pseudoscience. Okay. That was a foreign review. Are we, this is back in 2006 also. Are we all listening to the same podcast? The one I sampled is a goofy, disjointed stew of recycled news, bad jokes, and giggling. There's no science. And this is Science Podcast Beyond. Well, I got the name wrong. Oh, they're reviewing a different show. Okay.
Dr. K makes my knees weak. I heart her and everybody lay off Justin. He cool. Rip you Amy Adams and mention your high IQ in the same breath you criticize? Seriously. My IQ is just so much higher than all your science fakers. Ha ha ha.
So there is this thing that did get taken. I remember this. That did get taken in a couple of ways, which is I did an online science IQ test kind of a thing and scored like super genius. And I was challenging Kiki to do the same one because I am now obviously a science genius because of some online IQ test that I'd taken. And she refused to take the challenge. So I was like, well, we know my IQ is 158. We don't know what yours is. But it was all tongue in cheek because it was known. I mean, this wasn't an actual IQ test. And then somebody like complained about me stating my IQ because they're a Mensa member who would never state the fact that they have a high IQ, which they do because they're a member of Mensa. It was like the rebuttal to my fake IQ score was the fact that they would never say what their IQ is as a member of a high IQ society. It was like so self-contradicting.
In a row that reference your IQ. It's funny. I guess you were harping on it for a few weeks.
It was like, yeah, it was a few weeks, but that was like it.
Okay. Well, that's enough of that.
No, there's a lot of, I found like the mother load.
Negative. It doesn't need to be part of our conversation right now.
It does. I love, this is reading hate mail. This is what's fun.
I don't like it.
Okay, here's a positive.
Okay.
Dr. Sanford has a real talent, and I truly hope she finds another vehicle to broadcast. But this show is 80% mindless filler, actively celebrated by the male sidekick, which is there's such an endless parade of idiotic jokes and stream of consciousness drivel coming out of his mouth that one's tolerance is severely tested. Taken together with the production, which subjects us to mediocre college radio musical bridges and an increasing number of callers who follow the male host's lead down the hole of banality, has led me to write my first review. I really tried to like the show and subscribed and listened for some time, but I found myself increasingly fast forwarding through much of the show. I've had enough of this torture. Fortunately, there are increasingly better options out there, especially out of Britain.
Okay, so you used to take callers at TDPS?
Yeah, so we would take callers. Well, when I say we took callers, we took usually like 3 or 4 of the same callers. And occasionally. And then sometimes we took callers who weren't listening. We took a few like telemarketer calls. It was no screener, so we didn't know what was going to come up on the line. Oh, okay. Ugh. Number 2. I agree with Ricky, I just read.
Okay, last one.
Just awful. Dr. Kiki needs to go solo. This is a long time ago. This is 2009.
I just want to remind you that this is on YouTube forever, and I'm not sure that we want to be dragging all of these out for people to watch
I like this.
1,000 times.
What? Not for scientists? Ari Badger says, Justin is the most annoying host I've ever seen. He's like a spoiled 10 years old that wants attention all the time. Actually, Dr. Kirsten is good, and the show can be improved a lot if she gets rid of the douche and brings a real scientist to the show. You know, they tried that. Before I joined the show, there were 2 scientists, and it was like this. So here's what happened in science this week. Oh, that's interesting. So here's what else happened in science this week. And that's also interesting. Here's also what happened in science this week. Suppose that could be considered interesting. So as annoying as that. Also, there's one in here. There's one somewhere in here. Disclaimer. That has to be the most charmless catchphrase in history. Who, one wonders, enjoys being shouted at by a podcast? Okay. Also, I haven't heard where other podcasts have to start out with a disclaimer, much less one bellowed out by the host. My interest in listening ends with the yelling. Sorry. I tried for my own defense. I tried really hard to stop the disclaimer at some point, mostly because I felt like pressure. Like I had to come out with this new disclaimer every week. And I tried to stop, and I stopped for like 6 weeks, and people complained.
Here's the thing, Justin. There are billions of people, right? There is a large group of them that will like your disclaimers. So everybody who doesn't like the disclaimer, they don't have to listen to the show. Our job is to help the people find us who like our disclaimers, who like my invertebrate sex stories, who like Kiki talking about bird brains. This is what we want. We want people who like what we like to talk about and who we are. Because that's the thing that we are, is we're talking about something we're passionate about. We are genuine. We are ourselves. And we're different. The 3 of us are very different. We have similar interests. We all love science, but we're very different. And I think that's what makes the show so interesting, is like you were talking about before it was 2 scientists. It was very 2 scientists, right? But we bounce off each other in all these different ways. And that's what makes our show special. And our job is to help people who like that find us.
Okay. So I also find another thread common in here. A liberal dose of science. The boy toy needs to go. Or good science, bad liberals. there does seem to be a good portion of the negative reviews who are either espousing that God is better than science, or that there's too much liberal bias in science.
Yeah, and you would expect that in any strong science situation, just like in any other media outlet, when you try to bring science to the table, they try to make it about something else. But we are reporting science based on the scientific method, based on the same methodology that gave us medicine and cars and defibrillators and our computers and all of that kind of stuff. So I think it's nice to look at them every once in a while, just make sure like that you're still striking a chord with some people, but there are so many 5-star reviews on there, and that's what you need to look at. If we had a bunch of 3 and 4s, I think that's something that you'd want to look at, because you're not striking a chord with anyone in particular. But we have enough 5-star reviews. That means there are some people that really like what we're doing. And so to me, that's a sign to keep doing it.
Here's a 2-star review. Kirsten provides the brain power while Justin provides the color commentary. I think I first knew I was in trouble in the story about automated drones developed for the military. Justin flatly states, I am totally against weapon systems of all kinds. Really? In the real world, where the rest of us live, there's good and evil, honor and tyranny. The weapon itself has no moral value, but instead we should judge how the weapon is used. Yeah, I can see why that guy wouldn't like me. and I'm not unplussed by the fact that person doesn't like my interjections.
So are we going to make a disclaimer book still? Did you still want to do that?
Yeah, anytime you're willing to transcribe all 3,000 of them.
Didn't you already?
No. Most of them were written on bar napkins, by the way. So
I thought most of them were in show notes.
I didn't.
I just don't know where
show notes are pretty new.
So there have been show notes since I started. So we have at least 3.
And I've known about them for maybe 2 years.
That's not true. Also, I transcribed them for a while. When I was the intern, I would go back and I would listen to it and write it down, and it was terrible. Like, it was not that the disclaimers were great, but having to listen to like 5 words and then rewind and then listen to 2 words and then rewind and then listen to 5 words.
Too hard. Okay, here's a 3-star review by Stephen Sparks. I really can't understand what the reviewers are talking about. I have listened to all of the TWIS podcasts, and Justin is a brilliant mind. And not even classically science trained. As a biology prof, I can tell you when someone gets it. Unfortunately, his humorous insights are totally missed and cut off by Kirsten. I appreciate Kirsten's effort on this podcast, but it seems as though she really doesn't understand the science issue they discuss on TWIS. Huh? Listen to her explanations of sci in the news and tell me if it makes sense to you. She tries to act interested in the topics, but really comes across as a cheerleader. Justin tries to make it clear and funny and insightful. Kirsten cuts him off and disregards his insights. She puts him down in a disrespectful way because she cannot speak to his points at a deep enough level. And he has to apologize to smooth over the conversation. Wow. It's really wild that people have can have completely opposite takes on the interaction. On the same interaction, people are watching going, he's a buffoon. He's brilliant. She needs to stop cutting him off. She needs to get rid of him. This is like that Remington Steele. What's the other show? Moonlighting. That was the dynamic. It was that, the people are taking sides as though they're having to choose sides in this conflict between me and Kirsten, when we're just like having a couple cups of coffee and a conversation. That's interesting.
Well, anyway.
Oh, this is a terrific podcast if you're wanting to get the latest science news delivered to you by 2 very attractive podcast personalities. although blatantly slanted towards evolutionist views, Kirsten and Justin certainly do tend to bring a smile to a listener's face quite easily, as they don't take themselves too seriously, which is a huge plus. Well done, guys. 4-star review. Actually, it didn't take me too long to get to the 4-star reviews.
Okay, so I'm bored. Let's talk about something else. This is such a rabbit hole that you don't want to go down.
I just got to the 4 and 5-star reviews. It's only going to get better. We got it. You want to leave them with just the negative reviews?
No, I read a bunch of good ones. You sorted by the review?
By I started with critical and worked my way through. Ooh. I thought I didn't like science. Wow, that's a good TWIS, the daily show of science podcasts. I've heard them all, but I listen to TWIS. See, look, these are starting with great titles. Science for the Masses. I love this podcast. Great show. I so look forward to this show every week. My favorite podcast. Great science podcast. Just like the Monkey Cats. #1 science podcast. As good as anything on NPR. Maybe better. Science fun and you learn too. Simply the best. One of my favorites. Great. Amazing. Funny, entertaining, diverse. Not the miss. Fun and interesting. See, these are all these titles. Got much better. I'm feeling more like now I've gotten to the part where I'm surrounded by my people. Right? These are my people.
So we just need to find more of those people, and the way to do that.
But you have to understand, and you have to be willing to accept the fact, Blair, to find these people, we also have to go through the muck and the mire of the other people.
Yeah.
We're going to hear things that are science that they feel are controversial, that they feel are political bias. Global warming, that's political bias. Evolution, that's religious bias. Right? Like, these are things that you have to accept in taking on subjects like this.
Yeah,
which is that there are people who are going to believe.
I know that there will always be bad reviews, and that's an indication of someone in the public eye. Like, if you're not getting bad reviews, you're also not getting good reviews, and you're not reaching enough people. If you're not pissing somebody off, you're not reaching enough people. I understand all that. I also understand that someone once wrote on our website that I laughed like a little girl and I was annoying. And you know what? It doesn't matter, because I laugh how I laugh and I am a genuine person. And that's all that matters, is that when I don't fake laugh on the show, right? And I am comfortable in that. So when I see that, like, it hurts for a second, and then you're like, oh, but it doesn't matter, because they don't have to listen to it.
So I'm gonna open this up a little bit.
Direct my energy elsewhere.
Yeah.
Like,
so I'm
if
gonna open it.
review,
Yeah.
I said something wrong, that's a valid thing to say. Like, oh, you said this number when you meant this number, or you mispronounced this word. Then I learn from that. I move on. But like, if it's just about like, oh, she looks funny or her voice is stupid, like, there's nothing I can do about that. Sorry, guys.
Yeah. So, and then this is like one of those things that this was an early contention to all the reviews we got. And we've talked about this and March 30th of 2015. That's got to be a pretty recent review. I didn't look by recent reviews. But Kirsten and I were talking about whether or not the feedback was something that should be actionable. Should we be funneling this to get better reviews or what? All right. 5-star review, June 4th. I've been listening for years. Enjoy the weekly update of science with the blending of intelligent, insightful, and witty perspective. Hope TWIS continues for years to come. This is recent. You know, all of the 2015 has been 5-star reviews. Oh, here's Dr. Kiki, Justin, and Blair deliver great information every week. Right? This is fantastic. So one of the things that, like, when this show started, there wasn't an audience technically. When this show started, it wasn't even a radio show that may or may not have been listened to by the Davis greater community and beyond. when the show first started, it was literally people sitting around after work, after school, having a couple of brewskis or not, and talking. It started as a conversation among friends. And the idea came that this conversation should be taken to the radio waves because it was fun and we'd want to get more people involved with it. And so my attitude all the way through is anybody who doesn't like the conversation isn't somebody we would want to be hanging out that evening with the sun going down and the cool air coming through with the breeze and the stars starting to come out as we sipped our waters, beers, or other selected beverages. It's somebody who we wouldn't want to converse about another subject with either, right? These are the people we want to hang out with. And yeah, Ben wrote, it is still a conversation among friends. And so anybody who criticizes the show, and it's sort of a filter that's really easy to say, well, I can take no criticism because only people who like me, and those are the people who I like. But it's kind of true in this instance where people enjoy the sort of tempo and tenor of the show are people who are involved in that conversation with us, hanging out here.
So anyway, I also heard, who else spoke? Oh, Sarah Koenig, the woman who invented podcasting from Serial. Yeah. So stop playing with your mic, Justin.
Oh, sorry. I can't even hear it because I have no audio from my audio.
I'm hearing.
I only have your audio.
I'm hearing.
Yeah.
This. Yeah.
Okay.
So, she spoke about making cereal, and it was very interesting because they are such an edited production that it was like they didn't even know what the narrative was going to be. They recorded all of these interviews, they like storyboarded, they did all this stuff, and then they were able to package and send out these little nuggets of story. And so much of the whole conference was about learning how to tell a story and be a storyteller. And it's hard because we try to do that, but we're not telling an hour-long story. We're telling a bunch of teeny tiny stories. And so in our research, we try to figure out context and how to tell the story to make the science news interesting, but it's a very different muscle to be moving all the time than trying to make this hour-long narrative. But let me tell you, I did not find any other science podcasts at this conference. I was really hoping to like roll up my sleeves and do some science podcast networking and like meet who else was in the field. And I didn't find anybody else there. It was very interesting.
Yeah. And the disclaimer today was sort of hyping in the beginning that there was this really big, amazing news that was going to change our ability to know our past, our future, all that sort of thing. And yeah, that is sort of what the show is every week. Every week that this show does that. Every week this show delivers to my eardrums stuff I had no idea existed or raises all sorts of interesting questions to my mind that need to be solved at some point. So it's kind of unique in that I'm trying to picture where this falls into a form of journalism and a form of entertainment, and in sort of both of those, we don't have the makety up liberty of an entertainment show. Like I think we could do an offshoot of TWIS where we just, sat around and tried to be funny. I think we could do journalism where we talk about stuff that's already happened. But there's something unique about science news that I think has attracted all three of us to it. which is that, and all three of us, meaning the hosts, but of course the entire audience to twist to it as well, which is there's a lot more interesting stuff going on than is being covered by most news. And if it was being covered, look, if science news was being covered 24/7 by major news networks,
You still couldn't get to it all.
still couldn't get to it all, but I don't think I'd do this show anymore. Like, really, like I would just jump into the audience side and be like, okay, yeah, tell it to me. Tell me, like, tell me what's going on, and I don't need to do this show anymore because I don't have to go look for it because it's all being delivered. And I think that's part of it. I think if there was a type of coverage, and this is seriously like one thing I would never want to do would be cover sports.
Mm-hmm.
It's week to week, play by play, maybe a player trade, maybe a deflate gate jumps in once in a while. But there are so many layers and levels of people reporting on stuff about sports that there's no angle that isn't covered, right? And if science news was covered to this level, I wouldn't want to be involved with it. I don't know that I'd have anything to contribute. But I almost feel like we're way back in the day of the emergence of baseball. It's like we're covering the Negro League. And we're like, you know what? We've seen some really amazing play out here on the field today that most people don't even know what baseball is. The beginning of each episode of Negro League Baseball podcast, we're going to have to explain to you the rules of baseball because you probably haven't heard of the sport yet. And that's what it feels like. It feels like we're in the very early stages of this.
Yeah, but that's the thing is that, so yeah, everyone understands the rules of baseball or football, but I'm not confident that the average person will ever be science literate enough to be able to read a press release or an abstract from a paper and be able to, first of all, understand it, second of all, extrapolate from it, and third of all, make theories based on it. That's the part that makes science so different, is that you have to it's talking about practice and a muscle, is that if I stopped reading these things after probably 6 weeks, I wouldn't be able to make connections in my brain the same way I do now. And it's because I'm reading this stuff every single week and I have to talk about it. And I think that's the part, is that once you understand baseball, you understand baseball. And you might know specific players better than others or methods or all these things. But that's the other thing, is like me watching a baseball game. I understand the rules behind baseball, but I might not know that he's a left-handed pitcher and he's a right-handed batter and what that means for these two.
And the humidity is such and such. And the time of day, was it a night game or a day game? And what kind of grass is it? Is it real grass or fake grass? And
that this field has a really tight outfield and like all this kind of stuff, right? That's what the sports broadcaster does. Now, there's so much sports out there that so many people like to consume that's why there's this giant niche for sports. But we want the science to become more popular. We want science to be something that people are seeking out. But right now, we have to find a way to digest it and prepare it for people who maybe only want an hour of it a week.
And there's a little more. I always think of the Dark Ages in terms of our show. I feel like we're doing the show in the beginning, especially, less so now, in the Dark Ages. In the Dark Ages, you have to understand, we're post-Rome. And Rome had architecture, they had aqueducts that they could have. They could move a body of water 100 miles. They built roads, they had trade, they had all sorts of big architectural engineering advances under the early Rome. Dark Ages is when the Roman Empire fell, and so did the knowledge of how to build things. And so people went from living with running water to foraging once again.
Justin, I'm
And-
going to put oven mitts on your hands in a minute.
Oh, sorry. See, I'm doing it again. Sorry. Thank you. So, but you can lose. In the same way that you can lose an enlightened society. I feel like therefore, must be a way to build one. And the way you build one is by talking about those sorts of things that the enlightened, that vision of a fully enlightened world would bring. Now, I feel like we have an enlightened listenership. Why else would people tune into this if they didn't want to learn? But yeah, so I'm not trying to appeal to the masses. Also, that's also a part of it. The masses can keep on getting the Black Plague and bathing themselves in a cold creek with no heated water and having to trudge miles a day to get fresh water because they don't know, because they tore down the aqueduct to build their mud and stone hut. I'm okay with with that knowledge. It's for those who realize that there weren't giants that built some sort of complicated world before us and are now slain by the coming of the next coming or what have you. So, yeah. Ben Rothak has to get up in 6 hours for work. I actually do 2.
You have to get up.
Yeah. So I think we should say goodnight. But it's been fun after showing. I hope that our critics, the 1 star and 2 stars who aren't listening now, truly understand that I could care less that they're not listening.
Couldn't.
And that, yeah, because the show wasn't meant for you. The show isn't meant to educate the uneducatable. That's not who, your bottom 20% performers, you let them go. Lee Iacocca says he did a favor to everybody he ever fired because they weren't meeting the standard. Your top performers, your people who are interested, your people who want to get something out of it, that's who you focus on. And if my 5-star reviewers say they want to change or something, I'll pay attention to it. My 1-star reviewers never was meant for you. There was never going to be a tie-in to your religion. There was never going to be a tie-in to your politics. There was nothing going to in science that was going to confirm your preconceived view of how the world should be. So yeah, sorry, I didn't and wouldn't help you out with that.
Just people who you know who you think would like it. Let them know about This Week in Science, and if they like it, they'll stick around, and if they don't, that's okay too.
Hey Blair, have you ever done tile work?
No.
All right, we'll talk later. We'll figure this out.
I'll do some tile work. Can't be that hard.
Tile work.
Some YouTube videos.
Yeah, there's got to be a way to figure this stuff out without.
I'll make a TWIS logo out of mosaic, broken tiles.
Oh, that's brilliant. Can we do that? Can that work?
Yeah, my roommate and her boyfriend do a bunch of mosaics with broken tiles. I could ask them how to.
We got to make this happen. Nice. Good night, Ed. I'll see you tomorrow night. Good night, minions.
Night, everybody. Oh. Okay, goodbye. I'm going to stop the broadcast now. Goodbye, everyone. Goodbye, 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 goodbye.